Hello, Brother Sewing and Crafting family. Angela Wolf here, Brother Ambassador, and I'm super excited to see you. I have to laugh every time that countdown comes on. I'm like, we should have different music for each day. Because, anyways, why do we have the countdown? Because we're live, and we want to make sure you have a second to join us here. So, everyone pop in, say hi, say where you're from. Guess what we are kicking off today? I'm super excited. Wendy is back with another quilt along. You loved it last year. You're going to really love it this year. I got to see a little sneak peek of what it looks like, and you have no idea yet. So pop in, say hi. We're live in the chat right now. And Wendy, Chow, how are you?
Hey, Angela, it's been a minute.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so glad.
I feel like I said, this is like my favorite time of the year. We know it's National Quilting Month. When you show up with a fabulous quilt along, it's been a whole year. So everyone at all the Brother fans want to know, how have you been?
I've been good. I've just been busy life with life, but yeah, no, I'm really excited to be back here with another really fun, awesome pattern. And guess what? It's free as well. It's just going to be one of those resources that will be available on my website for, yeah, forever, how long it is going to be there. But yes, no, as you know, this is our third quilt along. We've done two prior to that, so if you want to, you could always get access to those previous patterns. But today we're going to talk about this year's quilt pattern. I think the very first one, we focused on a lot of different types of techniques and different types of more of a sampler sort of style block. The second year, which was last year, we did three different quilt blocks, exploring various quilting techniques and we were focusing more on sashing and cornerstones. And this year we're going to be focusing on medallion quilts. So that's kind of more like that. There's like sort of like a main feature kind of design in the middle, and then it just gradually kind of grows with like sort of a border around it. So this year the design is called Midnight Medallion. So I hope that kind of gives you a little sort of sneak peek into what to expect for that one. So it could be something starry.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that name. That's very cool.
So with this particular design, it is suitable for all skill levels. And if you're really a beginner, a newbie, you haven't really touched it, I'm going to be here to give you all the visuals throughout the next 5 to 6 weeks on here, actually. So without further ado, why don't I just show you the quilts, and then we'll just talk more about what we're going to be focusing on this week's on this live demonstration. So
okay,
are you ready?
To see the quilt. Here's the drum roll.
Okay, I'm going to move my chair out the way. Try to ignore this, but that's the cover for the desk. So are you ready? We should just do one of those other countdowns that you had at the start.
Yeah, we should.
But without the music. This is a bit more climatic.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So let me bring this closer to you. Sorry, it's a little bit crazy in here. All right. How's this looking?
The colors are gorgeous.
Yes. The colors are very me. I love yellow, pink, and white combination, and sort of that off-white. But anyway, so what are we going to be doing for the next 6 weeks? So the first week, we're obviously going to be gathering, and we're going to cut all the fabrics. And then when we're done with that, we're then going to be creating Friendship Star quilt blocks, which is a classic quilt block. Why don't I just sort of move my camera just down slightly so you can see the whole design? How does that look? That looks pretty good. So we're going to be making 4 of those. So there's one here, which is that larger star. And there's one here in this corner, one down here, and then one in this bottom corner here. And then from there on, we're going to then move on to flying geese units. So they make up a lot of the design. So that's a lot of the hard work is going to be done on the third week. Yes, the third week of the quilt along. So they're sort of this little rectangular shape here with these two colored triangles and then a background triangle. So they make up a lot of the borders that go around the central design, and then also the sawtooth stars. So the sawtooth stars are going to be created in the fourth week of the quilt along. And then in the fifth week of the quilt along, we'll be working on the borders. And then in the final week, we are going to put all those bits and pieces that we have worked so hard on to create the quilt top. And then we're going to quilt it together and bind it. And that's your 6 weeks of the Midnight Medallion quilt along. So let me grab the iPad so you can kind of get a nicer, closer look at it. Hopefully there won't be
Oh.
too much glare because the sun is just coming right through the office right now.
We love the sunshine. This is so exciting.
I
The
know.
colors are beautiful. Don't forget we're live in the comments. So ask your questions. She's going to give you all the details how to sign up for free for this. You don't want to miss it. And we've got a lot of Thursdays. She's going to be on every Thursday for the next 5 or 6 weeks. So mark your calendar, Thursdays at noon Eastern. All right, I'm back to you, Wendy.
Yeah, just give me a second. I just disconnected my headphones by accident.
Oh, okay. I'll take you out just for a second till I hear you and you're back. So this is going to be so much fun. If you missed the last couple of years when Wendy did a quilt along, if you are a beginner, you are going to love this. She shows step by step how to do every one of these little stars and was it the flying geese? The one was my favorite. I don't know, but I've learned a lot of new things from quilting from Wendy. So you will too. And even if you're experienced, you're going to love this too. So a couple things when you start working on the quilt, this is a quilt along. So you should join us and each week post what you're working on and use hashtag Brother Sews. They love to see what you're working on and they want to see this quilt. This is fun. And so while Wendy's getting, are you back?
I think so. Do I sound okay?
You sound great.
Okay, great. I'm so sorry about that. There was just a slight technical issue with my I think because I turned on my iPad and then it automatically connected to my AirPods. So I'm just going to take a screenshot of the pages that we're going to go through. So then that way, when I do open up my iPad, hopefully I don't get disconnected on the audio again. So I'm really sorry about that. Okay, so let me show you a close up of the overall design. And hopefully, let me just turn up the brightness as well. Okay, so it's up at the brightness. Hopefully you could see it. Hopefully it's not too glary.
Oh, yes, we can see it great. There's a little glare, but we can see it.
Yeah, so it's a 60-inch by 60-inch throw size quilt. So it's just really perfect for something to bring in when the spring comes in, like more settled in. That's why, yeah. Yeah.
Did you just say? Did you say when spring comes in? Aren't you sitting in like a foot of snow?
Yeah, it's slowly melting away. We did get a really bad snowstorm like maybe a week ago. Yeah, last weekend we got a really bad snowstorm. So yes, I'm based in New York City, and you probably hear I do have an Australian accent as well. So I'm an Aussie in New York. So and the snow is not very pleasant right now. But anyway, back to the quilt along. So for the quilt along this week in the live demonstration, I'm just going to show you just some of the basics in terms of how to prepare and cut your fabrics. I'm just turning on my iron as we speak. And then I'm also going to show you how to read the cutting directions in the pattern. And hopefully that would kind of help you out to, just get you organized and up and going. So I'm just going to walk up to my table. I just want you to continue to show my full body actually on this video, because one of my little secrets in terms of when I'm cutting fabrics is I like to actually get my table away from the wall so I can kind of walk around it. So that way, when I am cutting the fabrics, I'm not actually shifting the fabric, but I'm actually just shifting my body instead. And that just comes back to kind of ensuring all the fabrics that I do end up cutting up are accurate, because that does make a huge difference. So if your fabric is just, slightly off in terms of measurements or just slightly wobbly, it can have an impact on how the pieces sort of line up and match up, or all the corners not being straight and whatnot. So I tend to sort of shift the desk. So I'll show you just slightly away from the wall like this. I'm just going to move my camera this way slightly. And then if you're fortunate enough as well, I do have a stand-up desk, but I'm not going to adjust it because otherwise that's going to mess up the camera angle from this camera up here. But anyway, let's head on to the desk camera. All right. So right now I have all these bits of fabric pre-cut up already. So today I've just got one more set of colored fabric to cut up. I actually have prepared these little fabric labels as well. So you may want to actually print these out. These are actually available on page 18 of the bolt pattern. If you don't have a printer at home, it's totally fine. You can always just grab a piece of scrap paper, draw a grid, and just write up all the fabric labels. And one thing to note as well is I put a letter A or E, like a letter in front of each of these different fabrics, and you find that if it's fabric A, there's a letter A going to be at the front, and then if it's fabric E, and so on. So today we're going to be cutting up fabric D. So I'm going to shift this over slightly. And I'm going to grab my wool pressing mat. Do you use a wool pressing mat as well, Angela?
I do. I love them, especially when I'm working in a small space where I don't have room for a full iron.
Yeah, I love it. And it's so convenient as well because I could just whip it out instead of actually having to grab a whole ironing board out and set it up. Anyway, so I am now just ironing the fabric, give it a good press. And you could, I mean, sometimes there might be a little bit of creases as well from like how it's been stored. If you're really particular, you really want to get rid of those stubborn creases, you could always use like sort of some ironing spray or a starch as well, and that can get rid of the creases. And the starch would also give it some more body as well. But I just like to give it that just a hot press on it. So now I've got this all ironed out. I've got my ruler. Here we go. I like my long ruler. It's always handy to have various size rulers, but I always like my really long ruler, a medium sized and a small one. Okay, so I mentioned earlier we are going to be focusing on pages 3 and 2 of the quilt pattern. So right now, we are going to be cutting fabric D, so I'm going to jump to page 4. So I'm going to zoom in on here. Hopefully you could see it. Okay, so we're on fabric D, and what it says here, it's to cut one strip that is 3.5 inches wide. And what we'll do is then grab the ruler. And before I actually do any sort of cutting as well, I always remove the sort of jagged edges as well. And to do that, I've got this folded in half. This is a 42 inch width of fabric that's actually folded in half right now. So that's how it is. And typically, when you're working with quilting fabrics, it's generally 42 width of fabric, and that is kind of the standard. So if you go to a quilting store and want to buy quilting fabrics, they tend to be on bolts of 42 inches width of fabric. Don't ask me why 42, but that's just the industry standard. But anyway, so this is where the fold is, that's where the selvage is. So I'm going to line up the ruler. So I could find any sort of straight edge going horizontally. Hopefully you could see that. Maybe I'll just push it a bit further. There you go. So I've got this, say 23 here. I've got it lined up with the fold. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk around my desk. I'm going to push this back just ever so slightly so I can walk around. And I'm going to come around, and then I always use my non-dominant hand to hold down the ruler, put a bit of pressure on that. And you always should be standing when you are cutting fabrics. You just got more stability. And again, you can apply your body weight onto the ruler. That way the ruler doesn't slip and slide. And then you get your dominant hand. I'm a right-handed person. And then you just remove the jagged edge. And then that could be disposed of. And then you've got this nice straight line to work with. So I'm going to walk around the table again. So you can see that I'm not shifting the fabric, because once I shift the fabric, then it kind of just loses that crispness to it, or like you kind of shift the fabric and then again, that sort of messes up could potentially mess up the accuracy when it does come to sewing the pieces of fabric together. So I'm just going to go back to the iPad, make sure. So I'm cutting one strip that is 3.5 inches wide. So just going to slide it. So I have 3.5 on the ruler here, and I'm just going to match it with that straight edge that I've just made, and then apply pressure with my left arm. If you're left-handed, opposite way, and I'm just going to cut. Okay, and then that's done. And then I just fold this, and then because once I've done this, I immediately pin it and label it. So then that way I don't get confused or lost throughout the making process. Because throughout the quilt pattern as well, instead of like referring to like use strip one strip that's 3.5 inches wide, I'm not going to be referring to that. I'll just be like use strip D1 or something in the pattern. So I do suggest that you do label it. And also, as you're reading through this as well, you're wondering, okay, what's BB, what's FS, what's BB, SS, and so on. So on page 3 of the pattern, I do note on the final dot point that there are various different, different quilt blocks throughout the pattern, and what those mean are also just sort of shortened for background, sawtooth star blocks, friendship star blocks, and so on. So then you kind of then know in advance what these pieces of fabrics are going to be used for throughout the pattern. So that's just an additional information for you guys to make it easier to kind of, know what to anticipate. Okay, so now I'm going to be working on this next paragraph. The next paragraph says, for fabric D, is cut one strip that is 5.5 inches wide with the fabric, which is what I just did similarly to the previous one. And then within that strip, we're going to subcut it, and we're going to cut one square that is 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches, and then we're going to cut diagonally twice to make 4 triangles. And then we're going to cut from that, we're going to cut 4 rectangles, and then so on. So let's cut that strip now. So I've just made that straight line. I don't need to remove this sort of strip that we did at the very beginning because we've done that already. So I'm now going to jump straight to cutting that 5.5 inch wide strip. So I'm going to slide my ruler, and I'm going to
And Wendy,
line
just
it
try
up.
to keep your head back just a smidge because it's like right in
Oh,
the
okay.
camera.
Sorry.
No, you're
So
good. Your hair
I've
looks
got
great.
good, awesome. So I've got my ruler lined up now, and now I've got that line here matched up to 5.5 inches, matched up with this, and I'm just gonna cut. All right, and I'm just gonna carefully move this aside. And so I've done that strip, and what I'll then do is, so it says in the first dot point of the second paragraph that we're working on, we're going to cut one square that's 5.5 inches and then diagonally twice to make 4 triangles. So I'm going to carefully move this. I'm not going to try and move it too much because I'm going to come back to it and have to cut another strip as well. So rotate this. And then I'm going to get my small quilting ruler, or I'll get my medium-sized quilting ruler. So first of all, so we haven't removed the selvages here. And so I'm going to remove one of them. And then so to do that, I line up, it can be anywhere on the ruler, but what I do is I use like a horizontal guide here and at the bottom, make sure that they're all lined up with the raw edges of the strip that we just cut. If it looks great, what I'll do is I'll remove it. this can be disposed of, this jaggedy edge bit, similar to the very first step that we did when we're preparing to cut the fabric. And then what I then do is I line up this clean edge with the 5.5 inch mark because we're making a 5.5 inch square. And then before I do as well, I need to make sure that um, the ruler is also straightened up too, based on, using any like horizontal line here at the very bottom and at the top. The most important is just to make sure that there is a 5.5 inch mark, that it lines up as 5.5 inch there. And the best tip as well is always to measure twice and cut once. I'm sure you've heard that plenty of times, even in just sewing garments as well. Okay, so I've done that. And then the pattern asks to cut this square twice diagonally. So what I do is I will then line up my ruler with the 2 points corners. And actually, I'm going to grab my rotating cutting mat because I really like this for this part. You don't need to. Again, it's not essential to having a rotating cutting mat, but I like to hear. If you don't, you can always just do the same thing where you just walk around the desk to do that. But I will show it to you on a rotating cutting mat. So I'm going to line up my ruler. And I kind of do it just slightly off from the actual points because then it kind of gives that sort of like wiggle room when I do cut it. I do actually hit those actual corners of the square, if that makes sense. So just a hair, like the hair off, just like the actual points. So I've done that. Carefully remove the ruler without actually moving the fabric. And then I'm just going to rotate it. And I'm just going to repeat the same thing and carefully not shift it and cut again. There you go. So you then have 4 triangles, and these 4 triangles are going to end up being as part of the Friendship Star quilt block, which we're going to be making next week, and I'll be demoing that. So I've done this. So I'm going to stack them all together and then pin it. I think this is called D2. So I'm just going to go back and then, so I know it's for the Friendship Star quilt because it says FS, Friendship Star, and then D2. So I'm going to find a D2 label and stick it on there. There we go, like this. And then you just poke it, doesn't have to be perfect. And then that's D2. Now, moving on to the second dot point of the second paragraph, we are going to be cutting 4 rectangles that are 3.5 by 5 inches. So you're just going to be a bit careful about that. So 3.5 by 5 inches. So what I'm going to do is grab this strip that we originally had, and I'm going to cut 3.5 this way. So what I then do, hopefully my head's not in the way. All right, cool. So I'm going to line up this clean edge here with the 3.5 inch mark. Make sure the horizontal lines here are straight and matched up at the top and on the bottom, and I'm happy with that. And I'm just going to cut 1. And I'm just going to match it with the 3.5 mark. If you wanted to, this is what I like, a quick way in doing it. So you could kind of see where I've cut the first cut there. I then carefully try and match the 3.5 inch mark on my ruler with that cut that I first made with here. So I carefully line it up, and then okay, and then make sure that the horizontal lines at the top are also straight. Cut, and then I make sure that I don't shift those fabrics, and I repeat the same thing. And I'm making 4 of these rectangles. So I cut, carefully unfold it, and then carefully remove the ruler. This is just, there's many ways in prepping and cutting the fabric, but I'm just showing you this shortcut here because remember with the start of the first paragraph, the width of this strip is 5.5 inches wide. But the pattern actually calls for here, we want 4 rectangles that are 3.5 inches by 5 inches. So what I then do, once I've done this, I'm going to carefully remove this and then make sure everything's all lined up. I'm going to get my long ruler, and then I'm going to match this edge here with 5 inches. So carefully, this is just like a quick way in tackling these 4 rectangles at once. So I've got it lined up here at 5 inches here, and then you could use any of these lines here. I guess the vertical if you're looking from this camera, from your angle, and then I'm just make sure that that's lined up with those edges, and then use my left hand, apply a lot of pressure on it to make sure the ruler doesn't shift, and then you cut. So these are all like scrappy bits, and then you can remove it. And then I've just cut 4 rectangles really quickly. But if you want to, you could always just cut them individually, like one by one, if you're like nervous, you don't want to make any mistakes. But I just wanted to show you like a nice quick shortcut. So that was D3. So I'm going to match it with the D3 label. And then now we're going to then move on to the next part of the paragraph, which is to cut one square that is 3.5 inches. So I am going to grab this piece of fabric again. If you are bothered by this center crease, because remember when we first started, ironing the piece of fabric, before we started cutting, it was on the fold, so we could get the iron and press out the fold if that really bothers you, or you could start from the other end and then come along that way. But I think sometimes you may actually end up sort of hitting the center crease. So I'm just going to flatten it out a little bit so it's not too bad. And I'm just going to do it again on this side. You could always use some sort of like, I don't know, like an ironing spray or something if you really want to get rid of this. But I think it'll be fine. And usually it'll come out in the wash as well. Okay, so we're going to cut just a 3.5 inch square. So I'm going to grab my small ruler. So if you're a beginner quilter, the two ruler sizes that I'd recommend is always this long ruler to kind of like cover the length of the fabric, but then also like a medium-sized one. And you could always use a medium-sized one to kind of like cover like these smaller cuts. And then as a bonus, if you want to, you can always add a third one into your quilting ruler family. Anyway, so I've got a 3.5 inch square all lined up, and I'm just going to cut it. And just going to cut that corner again. And there you go. So I've got this. So that's ticked off on the checklist. So the next part, it asks for 9 2 3/8 of a square. I know it's a very specific measurement, but I'll bring that up close to you so you can see. But anyway, so I've got D4 checked off on the list. So I'm going to pin this, make sure I don't lose it. And a great way to stay organized as well is always to just have like a tray of some sort to have all your fabrics available to you, or you could use like put them on paper plates and divide it up based on color, or someone told me about that, how they divide that up. You could put like in a Ziploc bag or something. Okay, so we are now working on this final dot point in this paragraph. So it says 9 squares for that are 2 3/8 inches, and they're for flying geese. And we'll be cutting more of those as well in the next paragraph. So, all right, let's work on that. So what I'm going to do is grab my long ruler again, we know that this edge is already straight because we did that before. So I'm going to grab my ruler and I'm going to match it up with the edge. So I'm going to get 2 3/8 of an inch. If you can't remember, or like it's a very specific measurement that we don't often use. So I think like a good indicator where like, okay, I've got to get 2 3/8 is always maybe measure 2.5 first and then just shift it slightly to the left and then you'll get the 2 3/8. So that way you don't mess up. Anyway, so I'm gonna cut the straight edge here and then I'm gonna rotate it and I'm gonna use my small ruler here and and then start lining up from 2.5 inches here, this straight edge here. Make sure the top and the bottom are also lined up horizontally and then cut. And then I'm going to keep going. So that's 3, 4. I have a 2-year-old, and right now when we're reading books and sometimes we count things, he likes to go 2, 2, 2, 2, as if he knows how to count. It's actually really cute. So the only number he knows is 2. And it's actually perfect because when I do ask him, how old are you? He says 2, and it's the correct answer because that's
Oh,
the
that's
only number he
adorable.
knows. Yeah, which is really, really cute. All right, so I've got this. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I'm gonna with the other fabric. I actually have quite a bit still. So the fabric, if you look at the pattern here, it does say you need to cut 9 squares that are 2 3/8 inches. And then if the next paragraph, it does say 11 squares that are 2 3/8 inches as well. So it is for the same thing for flying geese units and it's D5, but it's just broken across with two strips because it's not long enough. So if I add 9 plus 11, that's 20. So I'm going to try and squeeze in some more of the 2 3/8 inch squares in this strip that I had before. So that's kind of my fault on my part, but let's do that. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the same thing. What I'll do is because I've had this weird strangly bit from cutting that 3.5 inch square before, what I'll do, really similar thing, it's to like, sort of cleaning up the edge before you actually start cutting. So I'm going to just do that. It doesn't have to be, it can be measured up against anywhere on the horizontal lines at the top and the bottom. And I'm just going to cut, remove that. And now, so I've got a clean edge. I'm going to repeat the same thing, grab the long ruler and then measure the 2 3/8 inches. So always good indicator, measure roughly 2.5 inches and then just slide it slightly to the left. So you know that that is looking at 3 3/8 inches cut. And then I'm just going to do the same thing. But otherwise, as I'm cutting this, I guess, do you have any questions, Angela? Or that you think of?
I'm just thinking, I'm watching this. I'm so excited. So we're watching you and we're watching you cutting so we can bring everything up here. If you guys have questions, we are live in the chat today. There is a link in the description to join. You'll go to Wendy's website to join for this, to get the free pattern, number one. And you're going to have plenty of time to do that. So before next week, you'll want to download the pattern and all the instructions. I put her website up here and then cut all your fabric so you can follow along on the next 5 or 6 weeks. We've got a long one. This is a great one. And I love it. So if you have questions, we're live in the chat. Drop them in there. We're live on YouTube and Facebook.
Yeah. And also, if you just happen to come across this video after where we are at, in the quilt along, it's okay. You can join at any point. You could go at your own pace if you do fall behind. So it's perfectly fine. So Yeah, and you get all the information from my website as well. It's like the first two blogs, and there's information for all you need to know, and also just information on. Um, I think I have like a blog post page where you just got a whole list of all the previous blog posts as well, so you can always go back if you need extra tips and whatnot. So I think I just need uh, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So I just need 4 more. But you kind of get the idea. I'm not going to cut anymore. So, so yeah, you kind of get the gist of it. So yeah, so that's really how you kind of really yeah, cut. So just remember, measure measure twice, cut once, and just take your time and remember the fabric labels. They will come in really handy. And then I guess the fabric tray. One of my favorite secret tips is, like I mentioned before, is just always pushing the desk away from the wall or some sort of like obstruction, and just like a place where you're able to walk around the desk. And then that way you don't need to shift the fabric as you're cutting, because cutting is really just the foundation of the quilting part. Because if you get that right, then everything is just going to be smooth sailing for the rest of the project, because all the stuff is going to just line up really nicely. So yeah, that's week one. This is what I've got to show you.
This is so exciting. So I'll bring you back up. So if you all have questions, again, we're live in the chat. And even if you're watching the replay, as she mentioned, even if you're watching this months later, you can still follow along. All the videos will remain up here. The pattern's there. So go to her website. I'm just going to bring it up again. Wendy, this is very exciting. So the first part is cutting the fabric. You gave some great tips, pulling that table out to be able to walk around. That's a great idea. Also, I love your table that goes higher and lower because it helps your back.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like quilting, it's very therapeutic, but it can also be quite of a physical thing too. So definitely always watch out for yourself. And one special tip that I have at the very last week always is knee pads, and I will keep you up to stay tuned, and you will find out why I use knee pads when I'm quilting.
Now I'm dying to know. I can't wait. So this is actually part one of this quilt along, and there's going to be 5 or 6 weeks. Just mark your calendar Thursdays at noon if you want to watch live, and also noon Eastern. And also, if you want to ask questions in advance, we will be posting these videos in advance. So just look under the next one and you can leave your questions in advance, or you leave a question right below and the social team will get a hold of Wendy to answer them. So Wendy, I have your website scrolling below, the-weekendquilter.com. You got Brother Sews there. Find your local brother dealer. What machine are you going to be using, Wendy?
I'm going to be using my Brother BQ 3100, which is like the top of the line of the Quilt Club series. It's a workhorse. It's my favorite. I've been actually using it since I think 2021 and have not had any issues at all. I don't know how many quilts I've quilted on it, so I have to think about that. So I might get back to you about it next week or towards the end of the quilt along. But it has quilted a lot of things and made several other things too. So it's not just for quilting.
That's awesome. Well, this is going to be fun. Leave your comments below. Don't forget, if you start cutting your fabrics and everything, make sure you use #brothersews.com so we can follow along with what you're doing. Tag both of us, and we will see you next week. Thanks, Wendy.
See ya. Bye. Thank you again.